Welcome into the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com, digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Roaring. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Mason. We've got Bengals to talk about. Oh, do we have some Bengals to talk about? We got some Reds to talk about. You just can't kill them, thanks to the Mets killing themselves. We've got some college football to talk about, including a game that I was fortunate enough to do public address for that was shortened in the second half because the other team was so rotten, and much, much more. So, Rick, we got so much to get to. Let's get to it.
I am thankful to hear that you still have a voice. I thought you might have said touchdown Bearcat so many times that you just couldn't do the podcast this week.
I did the forward third down a lot of times too. That was the one where I had to get my voice down there a little bit. That got to me a little.
Yeah, I can imagine. What a game that you got to witness there. But let's start with the Bengals, Skinny. The news of the week, everyone knows by now, Joe Burrow is out at least 3 months after suffering a turf toe injury that will need surgery. The Bengals have signed Mike White and Sean Clifford. We'll start here. Is your expectation that Joe Burrow will be out the rest of the year?
That would be my expectation. I mean, they're saying 3 months. And I think people take I think it's a minimum of 3 months. And then there's some probably, another ramp up week or two of practice to get to. Listen, I think everybody holds out hope. I think that's what you cling to at the moment, that Jake Browning keeps you in the playoff race and that Joe comes back and wears his cape and takes you to the playoffs and deep into the playoffs. Turf toe is a goofy thing, man. He's got the worst of the worst of it. This has felled some players to the point of retirement. I don't want to alarm people. I just want to prepare you for that. The flip side to it is, if there's one guy I've seen come back from some major surgeries, it's been Joe Burrow, right? Major knee surgery. Now, that's not uncommon in today's place. People come back from knee injuries all the time. Maybe not the way they once were, especially if they're at an advanced age, but that one's, I don't want to say fairly common. Nothing's common when you're getting your body cut on. But then that wrist surgery was really that one was not just a normal fall off your bike broken wrist. I mean, that thing had some real issues to it. And, we wondered if he was going to make it back from that the way he went in training camp last year. And then all of a sudden he was fine. And now there's this. And so I do know he'll attack it. I know he'll attack the rehab the right way. He'll attack it as hard as he can. If he's able to come back, it would certainly be a bonus.
The thing about that, though, is like you're saying, people are clinging to hope that Jake Browning will play well enough that the Bengals will be in a position. I mean, by the time we're talking Burrow coming back, we're literally talking about the playoffs, basically. He's basically missing the rest of the regular season in a best case scenario based on the timeline given. It does create an interesting situation then if Jake Browning has played well enough to get you into the playoffs at that point or get you right to the cusp of the playoffs. I know Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow and he is a better talent than Jake Browning, but Joe Burrow that sat out for 3 months and that might not be fully mobile and fully himself. Is there a bit of a decision there? Like, if everything were to play out perfectly and he is available to come back for the Bengals and they are actually in a playoff hunt, do you automatically go back to Joe Burrow in that situation? Or is there a bit of a decision to be made there?
I'll go back a half century, and that's a long, long, long time ago. There was a certain team that finished undefeated in the NFL, the Miami Dolphins. Their quarterback, Bob Greasy, suffered, I believe, a broken ankle in game number 4 of that season. And old man Earl Morrall came in, guided them to the rest of that perfect season, and lo and behold, in the playoffs, back came Bob Greasy, and he led them to a Super Bowl. So,
is this when they handed the ball off about 45 times, 60?
That is when they handed the ball off about 45 or 50 times a game. That part is correct. I've seen that scenario raised. Like, if the offense is gelling, of course you go back to Joe Burrow. You don't go back to an 85% Joe Burrow, but yes, of course you go back to Joe Burrow.
But that's the question right there, though, Skinny, right? There's no way of knowing, is Joe Burrow going to be right back to himself right away? And I think after an injury like this, you wouldn't expect that he necessarily would, sitting out 3 straight months and having a bad – and here's the part of the problem. You can't really fully rehab that injury until it's healthy, right?
Yeah,
you can't put a lot of weight and doing a lot of exercise on a surgically repaired toe.
Yeah, I wish it was a story ESPN did this week. It involved a Carolina Panthers cornerback who did this. And he was talking about how, he got it all rehabbed and he felt great. He was doing things in practice like he used to and felt like, okay, I'm back. And then lo and behold, the first snap he played in the game, it went back out on him. That's what this injury can do, apparently. And so it's an interesting question to raise. I would say, though, all things being equal, if it's 100% Joe Burrow that gets back for, let's just say, game 14 and you got 4 more regular season games to go, I'm going back to Joe Burrow. And hopefully it is a tough decision. Hopefully you're like, Jake's made this a tough decision, and I think he could make it a tough decision. I wrote a column this week why the team is so confident, players are so confident, coaches are so confident in Jake Browning, and the fact that I think he can win games. I've seen him do it.
I think all the stuff we just talked about is probably a moot point because as we started the conversation off with, it's likely that Joe Burrow is going to miss the rest of the season, it would seem. There was a lot of talk about the Bengals going out and getting another quarterback. They went out and they got a couple of guys that would seem to just be emergency guys if Jake Browning gets hurt, kind of a backup to Jake Browning situation. No one that's really going to threaten to take that spot over from him unless things really go south for the Bengals and for Jake. I think some people were upset about that. They wanted someone better than Mike White. They wanted a quote unquote competent quarterback option to give this team a chance based on the money they've spent on the weapons and what have you. Was there a name out there? Is there a guy out there that you think they actually could have gotten that would have made you feel more confident than how you feel about Jake Browning?
The only thing I would have considered, and we'll go through a couple of names here in a second, the only thing I would have considered was trading with the Giants to get Jameis Winston. That's the only thing I would have considered. He's their third quarterback. It probably won't cost you much draft capital to get him. You're not bringing Jameis in here to be the starter, but he is a guy who's won games and had major great moments in this league. He's also had some really awful moments in this league. He's a complete and total and utter wild card who just slings it around. But he's also got some good receivers to sling it too. It would be an interesting marriage of him slinging it around to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase eventually. That said, I think, I feel very confident in Jake Browning. I think the only way that Jake doesn't start until Joe Burrow gets back, whenever that is because he gets hurt. I just don't think there's another scenario out there. I saw some names that were floated out there. Taylor Heineke. He threw 5 passes last year. The best days are behind him. Somebody suggested Desmond Ridder. I can't reiterate how bad Desmond Ridder was in training camp. And I like Desmond. I thought it was a great signing. I mean, here's a guy that's just a couple of years removed. I mean, he's 8-9 as a starter in this league and started, as recently as 2 years ago as a regular starter. And so I thought, okay, great signing. So you got some time to maybe mold him. I think we talked about this on the podcast. You got time to let him, kind of be groomed, if you will, and worked on here, and hopefully eventually slide into that backup role to Jake Browning. And he was just so bad that it was never going to work out. I know some people talked about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins' salary cap hit is significant, and contract is significant to the point where you'd have to ask Atlanta, hey, you're going to have to burden much of this $40 million load. And you know what Atlanta's going to do? What do you think Atlanta's going to do? We want a first round pick and a second round pick. And then we'll take the money, and then you can have her. No, they're just. And I think Zach summed it up yesterday. He said we looked at the quarterbacks that were available. We thought these were the best 2 guys, and the best 2 guys that fit us.
Yeah, and I mean, whether they're the best 2 guys that the Bengals could possibly get or not, I have no idea, and I don't know how relevant that is. Jameis Winston, you could maybe talk me into, okay, that does something for me. That's potentially a better option, probably a better option than Jake Browning in this situation. But I think if you're a Bengals fan, you want Jake Browning to be their best chance here.
Yes.
I'm not saying he necessarily will be. Maybe you could go out and find someone on the scrap heap or a Jameis Winston that is better than Jake Browning, but you don't want that to be the case if you're a Bengals fan. You want Jake Browning to play really well because one, he's the guy with the best circumstances. He knows your system. He's been in it for multiple years. He knows the teammates. He knows it. He's the most seamless transition for everybody else around him. And he's going to be the most confident in terms of what you're running and his ownership of the offense. In addition to that, there is still the possibility that there's upside with Jake Browning.
Yeah.
We've seen flashes. We saw him play half of an NFL season and it was up and down, but he had some moments that were pretty good, and it looked like you could put a competent offense behind a guy like him. Heck, there were teams that were interested in him after that season talking about, let's take a chance on this guy's our starter if we can get him for the right price here. So I think that if you're a Bengals fan, that's what you're hoping for, is that there's still upside there with Jake Browning. We really haven't seen him get his full chance to shine as an NFL starter yet. Maybe this is that, and with the time that he's built up in the system and his knowledge of it and then his comfortability with his teammates, maybe that'll be enough for him to do really good things. In my opinion, if you're a Bengals fan, that's honestly your best hope.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, ESPN rated Jake as the second best backup quarterback in the NFL. I would probably concur. I would tell you that if I had to rate quarterbacks 1 to 30, he'd probably be 25 or 26 on the list, to be quite frank. That's right. And maybe even a little bit higher than that. I think Jake is extraordinarily competent. So I wrote a column about that why there's confidence. And here's the other thing. You remember after that 2023 season, there was a faction that said, man, trade him. You can get some value for him. This is why you don't trade him, for the instance just like you're in right now when you think you've got a playoff caliber, Super Bowl caliber team, and when the quarterback goes down, you better have someone competent to step in and take the reins.
Yeah. Now, I mean, my opinion is this is no longer a Super Bowl caliber team. They were a Super Bowl caliber team because of Joe Burrow. Without him, with the defense that they have brought into this year, I mean, most of my hope is gone that this team is going to contend for anything real. But here's my part about it and why I think it can still be a very fun season. The Bengals haven't made the playoffs that many damn times since I've been alive. So them making the playoffs would still be fun. And you turning this over to, yes, it's Jake Browning, but they're 2-0. He's got a 2-0 head start.
Yep.
And he's got the talent that he has around him. They could still make the playoffs, and playing in the playoffs is fun. Like that would be, I'm not saying it's what I wanted out of the season. I'm not saying it's the expectation now for Bengals fans, but if they were to make the playoffs with Jake Browning, this would still be a fun season. And I still think that is possible.
I do too. I very much do. I'm bullish on Jake Browning. I was when he took, look, once you saw him play a sample size of games, you're like, okay, the first start against Pittsburgh was meh. And that's the first start ever for that guy. And they may have not let him take the reins off. They may have had a game plan that was very simple for him because they didn't know. And I know that's what Zach kind of alluded to that yesterday when he's like, back to that first start, we really didn't know what we had. And now we do. We kind of know we got a competent guy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's also possible. I think it's equally possible. I was talking about the upside that Jake Browning may still have. Maybe he's even better than what we've seen. Maybe he blossoms into a legitimate NFL starter. I think it's also possible that he stinks. Like we saw him before that year before he basically got thrust in the limelight and showed that he could play a little bit in actual NFL game action. That preseason, you were debating between him and some other terrible backup quarterback. Trevor Siemian, which was worse. I mean, both of them stunk in that preseason, and we thought they were terrible. So
it is interesting. Jake has not had great training camps. I mean,
it seems like that every year.
And honestly, maybe he's just a guy that he's a gamer. And there are guys like that, right? I mean, right or wrong, there are guys who, when the game's on, they're better.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts on Jake Browning, but I do. My big takeaway from that is I don't know how this is going to go. I think he has a chance to keep them in playoff contention, and ultimately, I think he's the Bengals fans' best chance of having a fun season.
Yeah, I will say this, and it was the theme coming into the year, with or without Joe Burrow, this defense was going to have to still get better than what it's shown through first two games. I mean, they've lived off turnovers, and listen, that's kind of their mantra. They want to create turnovers, and they have created some. I mean, they've forced some. Now, Trevor Lawrence also throws right to Daxon in the end zone because Trevor Lawrence does stupid things at times. So you've gotten somewhat lucky there. I even asked Al Golden yesterday. We talked to him, and I said, what can you do to create more pass rush than just Trey? And he said, that's kind of my charge at the moment. I got to figure out ways to do that. I said, I don't want you to tip your hand, but does that mean you got to blitz more? You got to be more aggressive? He said, I just got to be better at creating pressures for us. And so maybe that does mean they blitz more. Maybe he figures out to get better ways to get one-on-ones. But I don't think Myles Murphy's getting any better, man. I wish I could say he is. I think Joseph Osai's been okay. You've gotten very little push up the middle. Chris Jenkins hasn't done anything. TJ Slayton and BJ Hill have done okay against the run, but they've given you really no pressures. I mean, outside of Trey Henderson, there's been, and Joseph Osai a little bit. You've got no pressure on the quarterback. And I don't know how that changes unless you just say, to hell with it, man. Here we come. And we're just going to hopefully create an extra turnover here, get you in a negative play every once in a while because we're not getting a lot of stops.
I did like when they had Hendrickson lined up and Shamar Stewart lined up at the tackle right inside of him in a pass rushing situation. And then you had, I guess, Osai on the other end. I'm not that Shamar's done a whole lot yet, but I do think those two next to each other creates a problem for offensive line, just trying to control those two.
Yes, I do too, except for one problem. Shamar's not going to play for 2 or 3 games. So there's that.
Yeah. I mean, I like that look though.
I do too. No, I'm with you.
Going forward, that might give them a chance when he gets back.
Yeah, I think you play a lot of games with those two, a lot of twist games and stunts with those two. I really do.
It just feels like a lot to handle when they're next to each other on the same side. You got a lot to think about there, just physically matching up with those guys. I'm sure you've seen the comparisons to Andrew Luck, the stats about how many times Burrow's been sacked and how many times Luck was sacked and the number of injuries he suffered and everything. How much do you think this is all taking a toll on Joe Burrow?
It's a good question because I think that's the thing you never take into account, the mental toll that a rehab takes. I do think he's single-minded that I'm going to get back to playing football. I don't want this as a knock on Andrew Luck. I get it. Andrew Luck, I think he had interests far-ranging other than just football and got to the point of I'm not doing this again. I've got my life ahead of me. I've got enough money now. I'll do.
And always did, right? Like he went to Stanford.
No, right. That's right.
He didn't go to Ohio State and LSU. He went to Stanford for a reason.
Joe's a smart guy. I mean, Joe can do a lot of things, but Joe's also going to have generational wealth in his back pocket that he's not going to need to do anything other than avocations and hobbies for goodness sakes. So.
And Joe, I think it's pretty clear that Joe's a football guy. I mean, his dad was a football coach. I think it is different circumstances in terms of who those two guys are.
Yes, and that's where I think the comparisons are fair because it's get hurt, rehab, get hurt, surgery, rehab, get hurt, surgery, rehab. And I do think it takes a mental toll. But I think this guy is just so single-minded about football that his only thought is, how can I work hard enough or as hard as I can without overdoing it, as hard as I can to get myself back as fast as I can. So I think it's a little bit different. I do want to talk about a lazy narrative that's out there, Rick, and you're probably going to disagree with it, which is fine. Everybody's pointing the finger at this injury at the offensive line, and the Bengals haven't addressed the offensive line. Yeah. Well, I would come back with this. And I thought Zach gave a great answer. I thought it was a terrific answer. He said all 11 players were culpable for that injury. That includes Joe Burrow. Receivers couldn't get off the line of scrimmage. So Joe looked the second time, both guys jammed up. At that point, the offensive line started to break down, to which point Joe Burrow tried to do Joe Burrow things and escape. And sometimes when you try to escape on unscripted plays, you're going to get hurt. And that's how he got hurt. So he's as much to blame too for that. I'll go to the other, that the Bengals have not addressed offensive line. Well, let me just ask you this. Did you want T. Higgins signed or not? The answer for most people was yes. Well, it cost you $30 million to do that. If you had chosen not to, could you have used that $30 million to allocate to help the offensive line? Yeah, probably. I don't know what great guard. I looked up some of the guards. I mean, the guards in the free agent market this year, as I look back on it, weren't all that great. So I don't know if you were going to go pluck a guard and pay that guy $15 to $18 million and make it better. But you signed Orlando Brown in his prime, correct? Everybody was yippee about that one. You signed Ted Karras, and you like Ted Karras enough to extend him not just once, but now extend him a second time. You used your first-round pick last year on a right tackle. You addressed that through the draft. This year, you drafted a third-round guard and plugged him as a day one starter. I consider, I think you do too, I consider anybody drafted in the first 3 rounds a premium draft pick, that those guys need to contribute right away. And
especially if you're talking about offensive linemen, yeah.
Yeah. And so right guard, I can give you that. But then they also realized they were a little thin and went and signed guy everybody loved in Dalton Reiser. So tell me when the pie is not that big because of it. And at the time of the free agent stuff, you didn't quite know where the Trey Hendrickson contract situation was going to land. So you needed to allocate some money for that. So again, what did you want them to do, folks?
This is the narrative that I agree with you completely. That I just don't see a ton of merit. Now, could they do a better job of all of this? Sure. Have they hit on all the guys that they've tried to hit on? No, they've missed. But I mean, even going back to La'el Collins, Skinny, they have invested in trying to protect Joe Burrow since the Super Bowl year.
I wrote that column. It's actually up at local12.com. I wrote it yesterday afternoon. And I even talked about it. After that Super Bowl season, they went out and signed Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, La'el Collins, and drafted Cordell Volson. You didn't have to like it, but he was a starter for 3 years. So he did do some competent things, and he started on an AFC championship team. So he did do some competent things, right? So again, you can argue they haven't addressed it to your liking as a fan. There's so many offensive line problems. Just watch any other games. There's so many offensive line problems across this league. It's tough to hit on that position. I'm sorry that it is. I wish the Bengals are not in a vacuum in this.
Well, and I certainly don't want to get into the whole, calling Joe Burrow fragile or anything like that. But there are other quarterbacks who get hit a lot in the NFL, and they don't get injured as much as Joe Burrow has. Some of this is just the nature of the sport and bad luck and things. Now, has Joe Burrow gotten sacked more than anybody else in whatever the last 5 or 6 years, whatever the stat is? Yes, I've seen the stat. But also, there are a lot of things going on with that stat. There's the fact that Joe Burrow will openly tell you, hey, on third downs, I like to take sacks. I think I can make big plays in those situations. So I intentionally will hold on to the ball too long and take a sack if we're going to punt it. So there's, and the Bengals had their issues going back that we talked about. They tried to address them. So there are more things than just the Bengals haven't done enough to protect Joe Burrow with the offensive line. Now, this year is the first year that I do think you can argue They put other priorities. The last couple of years, they have clearly tried to go out and address the offensive line to the best of their ability. This year, they clearly chose other priorities instead of finding an extra offensive lineman. And they also, because I think of a couple of the contract situations, maybe the Trey Hendrickson thing floating out there, they waited and waited and waited to add a guy like Dalton Risner, who's going to be your backup. Maybe you can make the argument if Dalton Risner, whoever that extra guard was going to be, was in camp longer and wasn't thrown in the spotlight, maybe they have a better chance and they're not getting beat around the way Dalton Risner was in this game. Okay, fair enough. But I agree. I don't think that narrative holds a lot of water that the Bengals haven't invested in the offensive line or tried to protect Joe Burrow. I think they could do better for sure, but I don't have a big issue with that personally.
I mean, how many Kansas City Chiefs games have you watched Patrick Mahomes run around like a crazy man, like a chicken with his head chopped off because he's trying to extend plays? That's the way he plays. And we've seen him get hurt at times doing that, right? I mean,
and everyone's told me Lamar Jackson isn't going to last because he takes too many hits and he runs around and all this other stuff. Well, I don't know. He seems to be fine. They seem to be winning a lot still. So
yeah. The other part of this equation then is moving forward. Do you, whenever Joe Burrow gets back, whenever that time frame is, do you have to tell him, hey, man, you just need to start throwing the ball away more and live to play another day? Now, the yin to that yang is he's created a lot of big plays on unscripted plays. And do you want to take that away from him? Because I think unscripted plays in the NFL, those scramble drill plays, I think are really hard for defensive backs, right? I mean,
yeah, that's what makes Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson them. That's why they are who they are. If you take that away, is he still Joe Burrow?
But it goes back to then, has he taken enough of the hits and some of that he's brought on himself to the point where you just have to say, look, we can't let you get hit again. I thought Rocky Boyman on the radio the other day made a good point. He played with Peyton Manning in Indy. I mean, he's like, Peyton and Tom Brady are kind of statues. I mean, they never scramble much. He goes, they didn't get hurt all that much either. Now, Tom did get hurt one year, as we know, missed a year. And again, you're going to get hit and hurt as much as you throw the ball. But I think those guys, their lesson was, I'm just throwing it away. I'm not going to take the hit. I'm not going to risk the play. But it is such a yin and yang circumstance that I get why Joe Burrow does what he does, because he's made a lot of spectacular plays out of pocket. But, maybe now you just go, hey, if you see an easy escape route, yeah, go ahead and take that. But if it's a muddy pocket and they're there, just either kill the ball or just honestly go into surrender cobra and call it a day.
Yeah, I think that gets awfully complicated for a competitive guy to diagnose that. You always think it's easy enough that you can squeeze it through there, that you can make that play, and you don't always do it. And by the way, like, this play wasn't that. And this is the play he got hurt on. It didn't actually look like that much in the moment. It just kind of seemed like a normal football play. There was another play earlier in the game where I can't even remember exactly did he lose the balls he was throwing or whatever, but he chased a loose ball.
He tried to
pump fake and it slipped.
No, he tried to hold up. He was trying to do a back shoulder throw to Jamar because I saw Jamar running the route. Jamar wasn't even out of his break yet, and I think he wasn't quite sure because it was well covered. And I think he tried to, at the last second, I don't want to throw that, and then it slipped out of his hand.
So he fumbled, and he goes chasing after it, right?
Yep.
And dives into a defender who dives directly into his hand and wrist and thumb and all that. And I thought at that moment, I was like, oh, that's it. That's like he just broke his hand or dislocated his thumb or something. When that happened, I was so thankful that he didn't end up hurt on that play. So, I mean, there are just so many different things. And Skinny, here's the other part of it. I think there's two things that make Joe Burrow special compared to other NFL quarterbacks. One is his ability to make that broken play, the extended play, the Burrow magic that we saw at LSU and we've seen with the Bengals. And the other is his ability to diagnose things and read defenses. And maybe that's where you hope maybe he can lean on that part of it more and become more like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady. But we're talking about him changing his style and maybe not running as much. At some point, do you worry about, does he start to see ghost? Does he get a little, happy feet back there when he's in the pocket? I mean, I think Carson Palmer was never the same after the Kimo von Oelhoffen situation because of that. I think he saw ghosts in the pocket.
He had a pretty long career after that, though.
He did, but he was never the type of quarterback he was right before that. And I think a lot of that had to do with he started sailing balls. He didn't want to stand in the pocket as much. I think he got nervous, at least for a few years, and it changed who he was. I worry about that with Burrow going forward. Like, is there some point where he starts being worried about taking hits and being injured?
Can I give you my hot take? And this is a hot take. I think something was wrong with his wrist. I think the wrist was bothering him. And I think that throw where he held up and it squeezed out was evidence of that. He didn't trust to make that throw. I think on the one play he got hurt, I think he didn't trust to make a tight window throw on that one. He didn't look good during that game for the most part. He was 7 of 13. Cleveland, I mean, didn't really make great connections down the field. I wonder, he got a lot of work in camp, obviously. Did he overwork himself in camp? Because he didn't look right in the first game, plus he played. And I just wonder, because that was always the talk about this wrist, that, you know, the reoccurrence of something with it is very real, that maybe it's just sore and bugging him.
He should have played more piano in the offseason.
Yes, sir.
I did not bring my tinfoil hat for this podcast. I did not be doing Burrow conspiracy theories, but I like that, Skinny. So your argument is Browning might be better than Burrow now because Burrow wasn't even 100%.
Yeah, it's a healthy Jake Browning.
That's a hell of a spin zone right there.
The one fact I can give you out of all of this is that Jake Browning is healthy at the moment. That's the one fact I can definitively give you.
I mean, I think we'll take that. I don't know if there's any other directions to go with this. Was there anything else you had that you found interesting from all of that?
No, I mean, it's I know people have kind of tossed in the towel. They're already talking about trading Terry Hendrickson at the trade deadline and all that stuff. Let it play out a little bit, man. Let the next few weeks breathe, and let's just see where we shake out after the next few weeks. Maybe it will be doom and gloom. Maybe near the trade deadline, that scenario can be popped up. But you're 2-0, and you have a real chance to go beat a team that's a little wounded, even though it's in their place this weekend. And so let it breathe a little.
Yeah, I mean, we're not big on doing the whole tell fans how to fan thing, and I'm not super Mr. Optimistic of like you should never tank and you should always try to win every game guy. But like the idea of tanking after the Bengals started the season 2-0 is insane. How many times have the Bengals been 2-0 in your lifetime, regardless of how old you are listening to this? And I mean, just within the last quarter century, this team has a chance to make the playoffs still. You take that as an NFL fan. You take that as a Bengals fan for sure. Who knows where it'll go? Maybe they'll lose the next 5 games in a row for all I know. But I think with the talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball, they still have a chance to be in most NFL games, even with Jake Browning back there. Yep. So we'll see what happens. Let's go to the Reds real quick here, Skitty. I've tried to kill them off a few times here on this podcast, figuring like we'll just ignore them until we actually get to the end of the season. We'll talk about their obituary. But I mean, after last week's show, they very much had a chance to get right back into the wild card race. They couldn't do it themselves. But even as we sit here today with 10 games left, they're still just 2 games out of the final wild card spot. The Mets will not win consistently enough to fend off these teams. Now, the Reds are tied with the Giants and a half game behind the Diamondbacks. So there are a couple other teams right there in the mix for that third wild card spot just outside of it looking in. What do you make out of this whole situation with this final wild card spot right now?
I think the Reds have blown such a good opportunity. I mean, if I just go back to that Friday night game where they were down 5-4 to the Mets with the bases loaded and nobody out, and your 2, 3, 4 hitters coming to the plate, you win that game. You blow a lead on that. I think it was that Sunday, blew a pretty big lead. You had that extra inning game against the Padres where actually you blew a lead in that one. Then you go to Oakland, and all you need to do is take one game now in retrospect. You do though. I'm not even asking you to like put together a 6-game winning streak. I'm just asking you to finish off games you should have. And there was that 8-1 game against the Brewers. Finish those off. The other thing too is I hate to do this because I think it's a 500 talent team, probably maybe even a little bit less. But Terry Francona's done some mind-boggling freaking things, man. Will Benson doesn't play for a month, and then, Will Benson, let's put him in the lineup. And listen, he can't play against lefties. He's a fully, absolute 1,000% platoon player. That part I'll get you. But he should have been in the lineup. Then you bring Sal Stewart up, and I don't know how to use him. What are we doing here? Sal Stewart should have been up a month ago.
The Sal Stewart thing has been absolutely infuriating to witness. So you brought up the Terry Francona thing, Skinny. That's what I'm wondering. This whole race. I mean, I was in agreement with you that this is about a 500 team. I didn't think they got much better from last year. I've said it all season that I don't know what we're expecting from Terry Francona when it's basically the same team as last year. But they're in this situation where the door has now been wide open for like a month for them to make a move. Is there a point where you start kind of like, I mean, let's say somehow they make this miraculous run over the next 10 days and they do find their way in. At what point do you start assessing this to Terry Francona? Do you put any of this on him? Like, it would be amazing if he pulled this off, or if they continue to flail and can't figure it out, do you look at the last month of the season and say, man, how can you not find a way to get it done there with the door being wide open the way it was?
I mean, he did two disservices to Ellie De La Cruz as well. I mean, never giving the kid a day off, and I talked about this 3 weeks ago. The kid's gassed, and then despite all of his flailings, and he was flailing badly for a pretty large sample size. It has been flailing, wasn't it? And you still kept hitting him third every single solitary day. It's okay. His psyche can handle if you go, hey, man, I'm just taking the pressure off. I'm putting you down in the order. I'm going to hit you seventh. And honestly, at that point, I even tell him, dude, just start swinging for the fences down there. I don't know what approach they've done to change. I do think, again, a lot of it is him being tired. I really believe that. But this home run drought is insane to witness.
It's been a tough week for Cincinnati sports fans when you see Joe Burrow go down with an injury. You start realizing that, maybe this whole Joe Burrow window and this fantasy that we have of like the Bengals are a Super Bowl contender every year now is actually just never going to come through to fruition. Maybe it's even over right now. And then you turn the page or you turn the channel, you watch the Reds, and it's like Ellie's getting moved down in the order. He hasn't hit a home run in months. And you start realizing Ellie De La Cruz is never going to be the superstar that we thought he might be in Cincinnati. It's just nothing ever works out here for Cincinnati sports fans, Skinny. It never plays out the way it's supposed to.
I mean, I predicted Ellie was going to hit close to 40 home runs this year because I thought he'd cut down on his strikeouts. And he has cut down on his strikeouts. And yet he doesn't ever hit a home run anymore. That's just – there's got to be some kind of dive into this to find out the answer, because this dry spell of him from a power perspective is just insane to witness.
It's a shame they canceled sports science. If they could bring that back for an Ellie De La Cruz study, we'd appreciate it.
R.I.P. to the late John Burkus.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Reds, Skinny?
No, it's just been the most maddeningly frustrating thing. And you know what? Wouldn't it be something you finish off this season by going what are there 12 games left, I think?
10 right now, right?
Yeah, 10. Go 7-3 and the other teams around you just disintegrate and you get into the playoff. I mean, it's
not out of the realm of possibility as we sit here.
As we do this podcast, as we sit here and do this podcast, the Reds' next game, they could be a game out.
Yes. Last week, I thought it was pretty much over, and then they were at like a half game back at one point. They really had the chance and just could not do anything with it. All right, let's switch gears here to college football. We'll start with that incredible game where you were doing PA, Cincinnati 70, Northwestern State 0. What was your experience like doing public address announcing for that?
I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, so I've done, a lot of stuff for my buddy high school events, and he's got scripts for his advertisers and contests they do. And it's really easy. This was literally a script about this thick, because then you don't realize that you're mixing in, and there's a producer, there's a guy running the video board. There's like a whole crew around you, and you just kind of follow the script to your part of when you have to say things like, hey, Bearcats fans, it's now to blah, whatever. But it is incredible to see how scripted out it is, like the duration of things and how he almost has it to a T. And that was the interesting thing to watch. Like, okay, now it's time for the video board thing now. And then they leave in like a little buffer, like if there's like another 30 seconds for the commercial that the band can then, it says band's choice, so they can play whatever they want to play for that period of time. But then in the second half, it got dicey because most of their sponsor reads are through the third quarter, and a lot of their fourth quarter reads, and I guess this is why they built them in this way, are for like volleyball tickets and men's basketball season tickets and even baseball tickets, women's basketball tickets. So you can kind of cancel them if you had to. But they chopped the third and fourth quarters down to 10 minutes each out of sheer mercy and pity. And so the third quarter, I think we only had one TV timeout, and there were like 4 sponsor things to get in. So we had to push those in the fourth quarter. And then about with 5 minutes to go to the game, you're like, are we even going to get these in? And I said, hang on, don't forget there's still the 2-minute timeout. And so we finally got it all figured, because they're like, there may not be another time. I said, yeah, there's still the 2-minute timeout. I said, we still have that. But yeah, that was interesting to watch. And they to their credit, man, they were super, super organized.
This 2-minute timeout is brought to you by Shoney's.
Exactly.
No one cares about anything that happened in this game, but Brendan Sorsby did go 15 for 15 for 252 yards and 5 touchdowns. Any thoughts on Sorsby's performance there?
And that's and good for him. But that being said, I don't think I learned anything about this team. I don't think I learned anything else about this team in this game. Like I think UC fans would like to. I'll give them this. You knew you were playing an inferior opponent, and you did exactly what you're supposed to do to them. I mean, they played hard. I'll give them that, because in those games you can have let up moments, and they really never did. The other team I thought did, and I thought there were only two guys on that team who were willing to tackle anybody. It felt like I called their name, felt like I was making it up, like they made every freaking tackle for that team. Number 16 and number 21. One was Jamarian Connor or something like that. But you can't learn anything from that game. I get it. I was talking to somebody in the press box who said you're going to probably see, believe it or not, more games like this now, because you have to play the one Power 4 conference school in addition to your conference games coming out. That seems to be the way everybody's going with this. And then you're not going to put yourself on the line to go play like a MAC school. You probably might play one MAC school, but you're going to start playing more like this. And what you're seeing too is this is an FCS team, right? So you're seeing, some of those FCS players at the upper echelon schools decide in their final year, hey, I'm taking a swing at the big time. I'm transferring up. Well, then guess who's trying to fill the rest of those good FCS schools rosters? Maybe some guys from lower level teams. So now guess what the bottom of FCS is? Garbage. I mean, that team was awful.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to think there's a couple things going on there. One, it's a recruiting tool. You get to look at some of these guys. You bring in like an FCS team. You get to look at their roster a little bit before the portal opens in the spring. Also, they're going to cost you less in a buy game situation. Absolutely. And when you're paying the players, might as well save a few dollars there. You cut costs where you can now. So I do think you're going to continue to see more of that. And like you said, you got the whole situation where if I'm turning over my entire roster, do I really want to take a chance on losing to Miami of Ohio, or do I just want to win 70-0 against Northwestern State and get some practice in? So, yeah, I think that's fair. But again, you're not going to learn anything from a game like this. But anytime I see a quarterback have a perfect game like that, 15 of 15, I always think that's interesting. Like, you didn't miss one throw. That's pretty good.
And I will say this. It was close to being on air as possible, but there were defenders out there. So you did have to make throws. So.
Even 7 on 0, it's impressive to see a quarterback go without missing a pass. So
hey, I will say this. I got to give UC fans credit because it was a good turnout, A. And then I'm going to give them credit again, B, that most of them left at halftime. You did the right thing in both counts. You were into the game when you needed to be in the game, and you said, okay, that's enough. I'm going.
Get out of there.
And that was wise on both parts.
Yeah. All right. Kentucky beats Eastern Michigan 48-23. They easily cleared that team total that I told you to jump on there. Cutter Boley got the start in this one, Skinny. We had talked about that last week. What were they going to do the week before the bye here? They ended up turning it over to Boley. He was 12 of 21, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns. Seth McGowan was big in the run game again, 18 carries, 104 yards, and 3 touchdowns. What are your thoughts on Cutter Boley getting the starting job?
I think he does give you some hope that the quarterback play will be better moving forward. I think that's the takeaway here. Eastern Michigan is not very good. To your point, they've been giving up points in droves, and your bet actually won on a coaching friend of mine. He took you up on your best bet of the week, Kentucky over, and cashed in on it. I don't think you learn much about that team, about Kentucky either. I mean, that seemed like that's what the score should have been if you written it on paper. Maybe even giving up less points to Eastern Michigan than they wound up giving up. But I do think that you saw some competent quarterback play that you didn't see the first 2 games. I think the thing moving forward that's a little bit on the downside is Kentucky's wide receivers are awful. They are just awful. They do have 2 really good tight ends, both local guys, Josh Caddis from Moeller and Willie Rodriguez from Covenant Catholic, and they're both really good tight ends, and they do utilize them in significant ways. That's all well and good, but you got nothing of consistency on the outside, and that's a problem moving forward when the rest of your schedule, other than a bye game late in the year, are either SEC teams or Louisville. So you've got, out of your last 9 opponents, 8 legit opponents you're playing.
Yeah, I agree. I agreed with that. I mean, Boley looked better, I thought. But to your point, you didn't really see the passing game set the world on fire against an Eastern Michigan defense that isn't very good. And I think a lot of that has to do with lack of separation by the wide receivers. Ohio State beat Ohio 37-9. Julian Sand was 25 of 32 for 347 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Jeremiah Smith had another big day of receiving, 9 catches, 153 yards and a touchdown. And Bo Jackson, the freshman running back that we talked about, Skinny, we mentioned last week, he looked like he might break out. He was the main running back in this game for the Buckeyes, had 9 carries for 109 yards. To me, that was the takeaway from this game. Again, not a ton to take from here, but Bo Jackson is clearly the number 1 running back for this team as a freshman. I think they've got to just turn it over to him.
I know that I don't want to make this into an Ohio U podcast. I didn't go there. A lot of my journalism friends did. But they had a pretty good non-conference. They almost beat Rutgers at Rutgers, beat West Virginia at West Virginia. And I was watching the Kentucky game primarily on Saturday night, and, scores are crawling down the thing. I got my phone. When you see 13-9 in the second half, it was alarming for a moment.
The MAC schools have been doing that all the first couple of weeks here. It feels like every time I look up and I see a MAC score against a power team, it's a close game into the second half.
I will say, though, man, this Ohio State defense is so good.
It's insane. It really is. The other funny thing is someone pointed this out on YouTube, one of those like video breakdown guys. He was like talking about how if you watch the snap, how many guys are turning and looking behind them at Caleb Downs to get instructions. Like Caleb Downs is basically just the coach on the field out there. He's directing everyone from the back. And he's going to be a special NFL player, I think.
And that's the thing. Julian Saint's done some good things. Grambling's possible to have a takeaway from that game. And to your point, he threw a couple picks in this game. But I don't think you need him to do a lot. This defense is not going to give up a lot.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things. They were talking about this on one of the Ohio State podcasts where their red zone efficiency has clearly been better, going back to like 2015 or something, has always been better when they've had a quarterback that is a running threat. Even when you've had some of the unbelievable quarterbacks like Dwayne Haskins that put up crazy passing numbers, Justin Fields' final year actually didn't run that much. When they don't run with their quarterback, they're not as efficient inside the red zone. And that's one of the things that they're a little bit worried about with Julian Sayin is that he's so slight of stature. And so far in these games, they obviously haven't asked him to run the ball at all. Not even against Texas where it was a close game, but these other games are definitely not going to. They're curious about, does he have that dynamic ability? And especially when you get into the red zone, are you going to be as effective with a guy like him? I mean, it looks like he can throw the ball. He throws a pretty deep ball. He looks accurate. So,
well, I would say this: if you don't score touchdowns in the red zone, kick 5 field goals, and you're still going to get 15 points out of it, and that's going to probably be enough most days.
With that defense, it might be. Nationally, there's not a ton going on right now that I've found too interesting, but I did want to ask you about Notre Dame because there are a lot of Notre Dame fans in this area. At 0-2, I know those are pretty solid losses. No one's going to be docking you too much for losing those 2 games the way you did. But 0-2 with a somewhat weak schedule. I think USC is the only top 25 team they play as of right now, still on their schedule. Can Notre Dame still get in the college football playoff?
So one of my another assistant coaching buddies, he's a Notre Dame grad, so he's a big fan. And we literally talked about this after they lost the opener. And he said, this Texas A&M game means so much in my opinion. I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of other statement wins ahead on the schedule. And then if you lose it, it forces you to run the table. And then even if you run the table, will that be enough? Probably because you're Notre Dame. And to your point, you can look back and go, yeah, but those 2 losses were really good teams who in 2 close games. So you can always do those things. But kind of like last year now, after that crazy Northern Illinois loss, you got to run the table.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing you look back to is last year, no one thought they were going to be in the national championship game after the Northern Illinois game. So they can turn this around. And one thing that I think we do every year is we place too much importance, especially from a negative perspective, on these early losses. Like when you get to the end of the season, everyone has flaws and we forget about those early season losses. We see a team that's just won 10 games in a row, and you start looking at them much differently when you get to the end of the season. So I do think this will be looked at completely different if they run the table and win 10 straight games, even if it's not a great slate that they have in front of them. I do, and just the way that the playoff is set up right now too, it's set up for Notre Dame to get in. Well, so with 2 losses, I still think they'll very much be in contention.
Yeah, I thought you were going to get 2 ACCs, and you still might. Georgia Tech's schedule actually now is pretty favorable. I don't know if they run the table or not. That would be something. But Clemson's kind of taking itself out of the mix at the moment. So that opens a spot. And the SEC is going to probably cannibalize itself. So how many spots? I still think I think at 10-2, they are clearly in the conversation at the end of the year. So I don't think all is lost. But again, you can't slip up again.
That's the bigger issue for them right now is like they've got to get the defense fixed. They got to find a way to not lose another game first and foremost. And then you need to start playing much better football if you're going to go on that type of run and impress people. But they're not a shoe-in if they run the table. I don't think it's going to matter how many other 2-loss teams are vying for those final spots, but they'll definitely be in the conversation.
And whether fans like it or not, the name still holds enough cachet that they'll be in the conversation if they go 10-2.
Yeah, and again, the whole system is set up for them to get in.
Yes, yeah.
So it's you would think they'll have a pretty good chance. All right, let's go on to our pick'em, where you were 5-1 last week, moving you to an 11-7 overall. I was 4-2. I'm at 9-9 total. Your teaser with Dallas, Detroit, Arizona, and the Chiefs hit. So that's another four-team teaser for you. You did really well on those last year. We mentioned I had the Kentucky team over 34.5. It soared past that, getting to 48. I think they had it before halftime, the 34.5. Interesting week here for college football, Skinny. Cincinnati, Kentucky, and Ohio State are all off.
No.
On the same way. Has that ever happened?
I don't think so. I knew Kentucky and UC were off. I didn't realize why. So I looked that up that the next day after I did the UC game. I'm like, I know UC is Ohio State playing. Look at nope. The only one of local interest that's playing is Miami, and they're interesting this week because you know who comes to Oxford?
I saw this. I can't remember who it is.
Vontez Burfict, assistant coach for UNLV.
That's right.
And Paul Gunter, former Bengals defensive coordinator, who's now the defensive coordinator at UNLV.
Did I see that they led the nation in penalty yards already so far?
Doesn't shock me. They are 3-0.
I believe they also lead the nation in penalty yards, or penalties called, something like that, which, it's not exactly a stunning development.
Coach Deef, actually, I think he's an analyst, but still, whatever he is.
Well, Paulie G coached him, if nothing else. He was the one who ran that asylum, wasn't he?
That's a good call.
Yeah. So to make it about myself for a second, every year I play in this charity golf outing, the What a Day golf outing for the Point Arc in Covington. It supports a lot of Down syndrome members of our community. And every year it's like people are trying to, watch the football games and stuff like that. This is perfect this year. Like, yes. There aren't even really good games this Saturday.
There's like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah. And most of them are at night. So this is working out really well. I'm going to miss the Utah game or whatever. I'm not too worried about it.
That's a noon kickoff too in Utah. So 10 a.m. Utah kickoff, which is a little interesting.
That's exciting. Sunday at 1, we have the Bengals at the Vikings. Vikings are a 3-point favorite. The total is 42.5.
Taking the Bengals to win it. It's a beat up team. Listen, I know Carson Wentz has some skins on the wall. He's done some great things, but he also is a backup for a reason at this point of his career.
Would you rather them have JJ McCarthy starting this game? I would.
So that was a question asked of Zach, and I thought he was very diplomatic about, I'm not going to compare the two, blah, blah, blah. But the way he's played the first 2 games, I kind of would have rather had JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. I just feel like he's a wild card. He's unsure of himself. I think the team around him's unsure. I don't feel like they feel confident in what they're calling yet with him.
Right.
There's just a lot of unknowns there.
I'll go Bengals outright 23-20.
Wow. So that is Bengals and the over for you. Yep. I'd love to be on that side of it. My heart says that, but my head says Vikings 24, Bengals 17. So I'm going Vikings and the under. What is your favorite bet of the week, Skinny? Do you got one for us?
I'm going back to the teaser verse, if you will.
All right.
I don't know how many. I'm going to build this as I go because I looked at it very quickly. All right, we're going to do a 6.5 point teaser. Take the Bears up to 7.5 at home against Dallas, who can't stop a soul. Take Seattle down to basically a pick 'em at home against New Orleans. I'm going to take the Tennessee Titans up to 11 at home against Indy. I'm taking Tampa down to a pick 'em against the Jets. And I'm going to take New England up to 8, getting 8 at home against Pittsburgh. So a 5-teamer.
All right. So when you do the 4-teamers, you're really good. When you do the 5-teamers, you usually lose a leg here.
You know that.
Can I offer you an out here and take that Bears leg off?
No, the Bears leg's my favorite part of the leg. I think the Bears beat the Cowboys at home this week.
All right. Fair enough. There it is. Bears plus 7.5. Seattle pick 'em. Titans plus 11. Tampa Bay pick 'em. New England plus 8.
And you're on record. So if that's the leg that gets me, you can come back and go, I told you so.
I tried to ask you out of it.
Yep.
But fair enough. I like Vanderbilt. Just let me be clear. I am not picking on Georgia State here because I picked Memphis against them a few weeks ago as my favorite bet of the week. I'm going Vanderbilt minus 27.5 over Georgia State this week.
I'm assuming that's in Nashville, right?
Yes, this one's at Vanderbilt, not at Georgia State. Vanderbilt beat South Carolina and Virginia Tech each of the last 2 weeks by 24 points.
Yeah, now
they're going to beat Georgia State by more than 4 touchdowns.
And I agree with you. I think I think you've again found a pretty weak line in my opinion, especially under the 4 touchdown threshold.
They're treating Vandy like they're still Vandy of old. Vandy's a top 25 team in the country.
Yeah,
this is a line like Vandy in a normal year.
I will say they knocked South Carolina's quarterback out, so that did factor into the kind of blowout win over South Carolina.
Yeah, but they still beat them by 24. They beat Virginia Tech by 24. Virginia Tech stinks too, but
they still scored 31 points on what is supposed to be a decent defense. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Vanderbilt will win this game by 35, 40 points.
Yeah, I know. I think you've picked on a weak line again.
Yep. All right, let's get in some Ask Skinny Anything. We just got a couple questions here. First of all, Skinny, a little high school basketball question to start things off. What are your thoughts on the Kentucky high school implementing a shot clock?
I hate it. I hate it. Here's the reasons I hate it. There's multiple reasons why I hate it. One, I still go back to, I don't know how you're going to find workers across this state with so many small schools that have a hard enough time finding a clock operator and a scorekeeper to then find a shot clock operator on top of it. I did see a solution on website bluegrasspreps.com. I'll give them a shout out. Somebody said you take the 3-man crews, officiating crews of current, and one of the 3 does the shot clock. The other 2 work the game. Or you take a guy, because it's usually, if it's like a triple header, you'll have one set of, and those are usually 2-man officiating crews for the first, like the freshman JV games. You take one of those 2 guys, and you pay them, obviously. You take one of those 2 guys, and they stick around for the 3rd game to work the shot clock. I'll give you maybe that's not an awful solution in my opinion there, but from a coaching perspective. So here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. It's going to create more shots, sure, I guess, maybe not. Maybe teams take it down to the end and then take bad shots. I think you're going to have, like right now, if you're a competent coach, you're running your offense to take the first best shot available, right? Well, maybe.
No, I don't think most high school coaches do that. No, I definitely do not think that's the case.
I know we do, so I'll give you that part.
Fair enough, but
we'll occasionally spread the floor on you at the end of games. 3 minutes to go, we got to leave. We'll spread the floor on you, and that'll take that part away from it. So if you're playing a zone or whatever, you can stick in your zone longer. I think that would be maybe a positive to some degree defensively. I think this is going to be a help to defensive teams. The defensive teams that can grind you down to where you can't get a good look until it's deep in the shot clock, and then some kid has to hoist one. I think the problem at the high school level is you don't have enough shot creators. You just don't. I mean, NBA guys, they know how to be shot. They are shot creators.
So let me stop you right there. You're a defensive guy. You think you're all about taking charges and not letting anyone ever score a single basket. Correct. You think defense should be allowed to stop the offense in every possession ever in basketball. So why do you have a problem with this making the defense stronger?
Because again, I don't think it's going to help the root cause, which people want to see more fast-paced play. You can still run a very patterned offense in 35 seconds. The other problem is going to come in, and I had a coaching friend in a text chain. He's like, what's going to happen is you're going to have a kid take what looks like a pretty good shot at 18 on the shot clock, right? Like it's a pretty good shot, but not maybe the greatest shot in the world, but a pretty good shot. And that coach is going to go, we had 18 seconds to work more for a shot. Let's start doing that. I don't think it solves what everybody wants, which they want to see fast paced. It's not going to, I mean, hell, we had a college game last year, Rick, that was 32-12 at the half with Arkansas and South Carolina, and they got a shot clock.
Yeah.
And they played 20 minutes.
So first of all, I don't understand your issue with it because you don't care if scoring is increased. You don't want there to be more scoring. So why do you care if it hurts the offense? I want you to determine
how long it takes you to take a shot. If it takes you a minute and a half to run your stuff, and that's when you finally get your best look, great.
But we have a different opinion on what basketball is then. To me, running offense for a minute and a half isn't basketball. It's like seeing who can be the most disciplined marchers. It's like, go join the ROTC if that's what you want to do. That's not basketball. That's just marching in line for a while.
Do you really think that this solves whatever problem people perceive it to be?
Like I don't know what problem. Yeah, I do think it solves the problem of teams that go and sit with the ball on their hip for 4.5 minutes for an entire quarter of a game because they don't want to play the game. I do think it solves the problem of like Moeller and St. X aren't in Kentucky, but those teams that play these scores in the 20 despite having Division I prospects because they hold the ball for 2.5 minutes running motion offenses. Yeah, I do think it prevents you from doing that. And I don't think that is the sport of basketball. So I'm okay with that. I think the faster you play, the more you can make your kids make decisions, the better they learn the game.
Listen, I'm all about fast. Trust me, I'm all dude.
I know that's why you have a problem with it. You don't coach against this style, like
but I just don't think it solves the problem that everybody thinks it's going to solve.
What problem is that?
that suddenly we're going to have scores in the 70s and 80s. I don't believe
who wants that though? I don't think that's the issue. I think they want people to stop holding the ball on their hip for an entire quarter when they see a zone defense.
Well, you're allowed to prevent that by going out and guarding that and double teaming that and doing things to speed them up. That's on you then as a coach.
I agree with that, but you can also implement a shot clock, and now that's not part of the game. So what? Yeah, I don't see that as a huge issue.
Yeah. I mean, I know Julian Tackett made a point of trying to get with the modern times. That's all well and good. If you want to do modern times, let's go to classification, be the last state to not classify.
You want to ruin a true state championship? Why would you want to do that?
I'm just saying. I mean,
you're just arguing against this for the sake of arguing against it. You don't believe anything that you just said.
Oh, I do. I never liked the idea of a shot clock in high school.
I know, but you just don't like it because you don't want change. There's no actual reason that you gave me for not wanting it.
There is reason. I just don't think you have to need to force high school kids to take a shot in a certain amount of time because there are just not enough shot creators at that level. I mean, you think it's bad in the GCL now? Trust me, I know you don't agree with this. That the reason the scores are the way they are in that league is because officials let them really play, and I mean it is hard to get off any kind of a shot. Now you're going to be asked to hoist one every 35 seconds and take a terrible shot. You're going to see 20 to 18 games.
You know what? Then quit bullying the officials into not calling fouls and quit playing football in the GCL. Maybe. And also don't run offenses that sit there for 2.5 minutes every possession. That's not basketball. You can score before that. I promise you. It's just not realistic. Like no one's going into college and playing that way. So why prepare your guys for that? Teach them to play the sport the way it's played.
This was inevitable. I mean, it's probably going to come to all 50 states at some point. The National Federation of High Schools is probably going to implement this as a mandate across the board. Yay. Go ahead. Great.
Now, I do think the idea of like parents trying to operate a shot clock would be a disaster. Like knowing the rules and understanding how it works would be a disaster. You do need an official to do it.
Yeah. I mean, but again, you know what that's going to cost schools then? Another $60, $80 a night. I don't know. Some of the smaller schools, can they afford that?
Yeah, well, they're charging like $15 a head to get into these games anymore. I think they'll be able to figure it out. Just take it out of the pot there. True or false? Joe Burrow wins a Super Bowl with a team not in Ohio.
No, false. I think if he wins a Super Bowl, it will be with the Bengals.
All right.
That's a good question, though.
It's an interesting one, yeah. I mean, is there anything? Do you think there's anything to the merit of Joe's fed up with Cincinnati and he's going to want out after all of this?
He hasn't given any indication yet.
Yeah, to me, the injuries don't have anything to do with Cincinnati. No. I don't think he's blaming them for not protecting him. I think the only thing you can maybe argue is some of the stuff of people going back to like the Bengals are cheap with contracts and he's mad about that or something. But they've given him pretty much everything he's asked for. So
That's a fact. At
some point, maybe you need to stand up to him and tell him like, actually, we're going to control the roster and instead of signing all the guys you want. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. If Burrow could play Sunday with a prosthetic toe, which would mean cutting off his current big toe, should he do that for the Bengals fan base?
Ronnie Lott once cut off a finger.
Does Joe Burrow actually care about winning?
I don't know how. Yeah, I guess it would be a prosthetic toe if he did do that. Oh boy, that's a tough. I would say no. I would not recommend that. I think there are life choices you would make, and not wanting your toe amputated just for the sake of amputation and football, I would not condone that. No.
I would agree. And then a very serious question to finish it all off. Yeah. Brats or Mets?
Brats are I always get them confused. Mets are the white things, right?
Brats are the white things. Mets are like
like Zoomer Met. Yeah, I like Zoomer Mets. Met, I'm team Met all the way.
I'm a brat guy.
If I ever eat a brat, and my wife likes brats, so occasionally like for dinner but I always have Mets, so I always got something alternative. She'll eat.
Yeah, you get like the bluegrass alternating pack.
Yep, bingo.
Yeah.
If I do eat a brat, because like if you're to cook out and the hamburgers are gone, and the hot dogs.
Are you a sauerkraut guy? Are you going to tell me you got to do sauerkraut with it?
Well, yeah, I am a sauerkraut guy, and yes, I would have to do it, but it has to be almost semi-charred. It's got to be very, very, very well cooked.
I'm not a char guy on the grilled links. You know what's funny is almost once a year, always this happens to me. Maybe every 2 years sometimes, but I'll just quit eating hot dogs completely. I mean, I never think of them. I never crave them or whatever, but then I'll have one and I'll remember like, actually, I kind of like hot dogs.
So dude, I'm the same.
It's really good. Like once a year,
like a Saturday afternoon college football. And I don't eat lunch a lot. I really don't, but like for whatever reason, that feels like sitting at home. You just got to have something. And that's usually when the hot dog thing kicks in. I'll put 2 of them in the microwave, straight out of the freezer, right into the microwave. They cook up perfectly, in my opinion. steam the buns, I get a little mixture of hot sauce and mustard to put on them. And when I get done, I'm like, damn, why don't I do this more often? That's really good. Actually, you know what else is good on those? If you do slice a dill pickle spear down the middle and put it on either side of the hot dog and on top of the hot dog.
It's just like a poor man's relish right there.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Lazy man's relish.
Well, relish is a little sweeter. I mean, this is more dilly.
That's what I'm saying. Lazy man's relish.
And when I get done with it, it's like, this is really good. It took me about 5 minutes total from the time I cut open the package to the time I finished eating these. Why don't I do this more often?
I did that this past Saturday during college football. I happened to we had hot dogs in the fridge for whatever reason. I was like, you know what? I'm going to eat a hot dog. And it was good. It was really good. So
can't go wrong with a good hot dog.
I won't have another one for another year or two. But
no, I'm the same way. I'm not at home a lot on college football Saturdays, but it feels like the 3 or 4 times I am, it's like, gosh, darn it, this should be like a go-to lunch, and I don't eat lunch enough. And then, I don't know, I don't know why. Hot dogs are underrated.
They did do a study a couple years ago trying to judge like which foods took the most years off your life and which ones were like the best for you. And peanut butter and jelly was deemed like the best for you for longevity.
Oh, really?
And a hot dog was deemed the worst, the one that took the most days off your life. So
a hot dog?
Yes, hot dog. Yeah, believe it or not, sodium, processed meat, fat, all that. Yeah, it was not good for you apparently. But
well, I'm not here to tell you need to like be Ben Matlock and eat a hot dog in every episode. But I mean, goodness gracious, I mean, it's not going to kill you to eat a hot dog every once in a while.
Yeah, I think once every year or two, as I'm doing, is probably a good strategy. But yeah, they're shockingly good occasionally. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you. That's a very good call. All right, that's all we got?
That's all I got.
That's all we got. All right, for Rick Brewing, I'm Richard Skinner. Thanks for being with us. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly Poetry edition, presented by Blake the Attorney Mason.